This is a cold case file. All the stories featured in this series are unsolved, meaning there is very little information about them online. So if you want to learn more, you need to listen. Kristin Noel David was a 22-year-old senior at the University of Idaho, studying broadcast journalism and political science. She was smart, ambitious, and deeply loved by her friends and family. On the morning of June 26, 1981, Kristin set out from Moscow, Idaho, on her blue 10-speed bicycle. Her goal was to reach Lewiston, a familiar route she'd taken before. She planned to arrive around lunchtime where she would meet her father, Tom, who was taking her place in a relay race down the Snake River. The day before, Kristin had written about the event in her diary, mentioning she would cycle to Lewiston, then return home with her dad in his motorboat. No one knows what happened next. That morning, several witnesses spotted Kristin on the highway. Some remembered seeing a man in a brown vehicle, either a van or car, who appeared to approach women along the route, possibly trying to engage them. Investigators believe this man may have encountered Kristin along the way. Shortly after, she vanished without a trace. Kristin's mom, Jan, grew increasingly worried when her daughter didn't show up that evening. First-year students often cycled the route and were usually home by dark. Kristin had a habit of stopping at roadside attractions like the Stonehenge replica or the Museum of North Idaho in Kingston, then cycling another few miles before returning home. This time, she didn't stop anywhere. By 11 p.m., Jan was sure something was wrong. She and her husband began driving the route, calling Kristin's name. When they couldn't find her, they reported her missing to the police. The search began immediately. Volunteers scoured the area, though there were no signs of Kristin or her bicycle. By June 28, 2 days after she disappeared, the search had expanded to include boats and divers who combed the snake, convinced Kristin must have had an accident and fallen in. But even after 3 days, there was nothing. The case went cold. Then, 8 days later, on July 4th and 5th, horrifying discoveries were made. Dismembered body parts began surfacing in the Snake River near Clarkston, Washington. They had been carefully wrapped in black plastic trash bags and tied shut. Each bag was meticulously padded with newspaper, specifically pages from 4 different editions of the Lewiston Morning Tribune, all dated April 1981. The details sent chills through investigators. Someone had saved those papers for months, suggesting preparation and precision. After the first 2 bags were recovered, divers searched the river and found a third. It was heavier and felt oddly shaped. Inside the bag were more newspaper pages, this time from May 1981. Instead of body parts, however, this bag contained a pair of neatly folded jeans. While these were being examined, another bag surfaced, brought to the attention of police by a dog walker. Once again, there were more newspaper pages, this time from June 1981, and inside was a pair of Kristin's red and white Keds sneakers. All the bags were exactly the same, identical plastic, same knots, same padding technique. By now, investigators were certain they were dealing with a serial killer. Forensic analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Kristin. The dental records matched. Her bicycle was found a month later, abandoned on the side of the highway where she'd been last seen. Clothes and other personal belongings were never found. Some bones, including a portion of her right leg, were also missing. Whether they had been lost in the river or intentionally kept was a haunting unknown. The murder was savage. How do you go from a normal day to such brutality? The case shocked the small town. Everyone knew Kristin. She was friendly, energetic, always smiling. She wanted to be a TV anchor and already had a job lined up after graduation. Friends struggled to understand why anyone would want to hurt her, but others weren't so surprised. As one friend told the New York Times, she was beautiful, she was intelligent, she was articulate. There was no reason for her to trust anyone. Despite extensive interviews, leads came and went. The FBI stepped in and created a 20-point behavioral profile of the likely killer. A white male, 21 to 28 years old, likely living alone or with a girlfriend or mother, driving a late-model vehicle and with a background that might include local familiarity. He was likely someone who presented well, but failed to meet expectations in his personal or professional life. Smart, but underage. Many people fit the description and countless theories developed, but none led to charges. The closest anyone came was a man who resembled the profile and had been convicted of raping a woman on a bike path. But even he was only considered a suspect because he lived in the area at the time and bore a slight resemblance. In reality, we don't know much about him. We don't know what kind of car he drove, what he looked like, whether he had a job, how he met Kristin, or why he chose her. We don't even know his name. Over the next decade, a chilling thought struck fear into residents throughout the Lewis-Clark Valley area. Could there be more victims? What was clear is that Kristin was not the only young person to disappear in the region between the late 1970s and early 1980s. In 1982, just a year after Kristin's murder, 3 more individuals connected to the Lewiston Civic Theater, Christina Nelson, Brandy Miller, and Stephen Parasolaso, vanished. None of their cases were ever solved. Police believe the 3 may have run away together, But that theory quickly fell apart. Investigators learned that Kristina had recently broken off a relationship with a man named Dave, who immediately became a suspect. But unlike the meticulous Kristin case, Dave left no forensic evidence behind. His alibi checked out. He was merely questioned and released. A few weeks later, both Kristina's and Brandy's bodies were found. Stephen, who worked at the theater, was never seen again. Some believe he was a witness, not a suspect. Others think he may have known too much. At one point, serial killer Otis Toole claimed responsibility for Kristin's death, but authorities later dismissed his confession as another person who had ties to the Lewiston Civic Theater and knew multiple victims, quietly emerged as a person of interest. But no charges were ever laid, and the case grew cold. Time passed, people moved away, families moved on. Yet over the decades, questions remained. Was there a serial killer lurking in the shadows? What had happened to Kristin? What had become of the others? Was there a connection? Could some things be linked to others? Could more bodies turn up? The answer was yes. In 2011, a short documentary titled Confluence reignited public attention. In 2018, an investigation discovery series called Cold Valley, which explored possible links between the cases, aired. But it was in 2025, more than 4 decades later, that Kristin's name returned to headlines with real urgency. The popular Crime Junkie podcast released an in-depth episode titled Murdered. Kristin David, the hosts focused on the forensic clues, the newspaper wrappings, the dismemberment, and the missing remains. Listeners were great. Host Ashley Flowers suggested Kristin's murder may not fit the same pattern as other local disappearances, as raising the possibility that another, different serial killer may have been active at the time. Now, the idea that a predator stalked the region in the early 1980s isn't new, but this hasn't been widely discussed until now. The podcast generated new tips for police, as well as fresh leads for the victim's family, and it introduced the case to a whole new audience. Anyone interested in serial killers, forensic psychology, or true crime will find something to appreciate here. The host explores every aspect of the crime scene: the victim, the behavior, the forensics, the investigation, and the aftermath. Theories are proposed, connections are drawn, and startling possibilities are put forward. You can decide what you think really happened based on the facts and the details presented. At the end of the podcast, Ashley Flowers asked listeners for help. If anyone had knowledge of other murders, particularly those involving black plastic bags or missing limbs, they were urged to come forward. There could be more victims, she warned, hidden in cold case files scattered across the Pacific Northwest. Today, Kristin David's case remains officially unsolved. Her family, friends, and a new generation of true crime sleuths continue to seek answers. Some believe the only way justice will be served is if the killer is identified and held responsible. Others believe the case should be closed, but the truth still matters. More than 4 decades later, a single question continues to echo. Why? Why was Kristin chosen? If you have any information about this case, please contact the police.